Hey guys, Thomas Jr. here, aka Mustached. I'm here to review Halloween 2018. I say 2018 because there are two other renditions of Halloween. That, of course, being the original Halloween and the reboot of Halloween that was done a bit ago, and now we have another reboot, which is pretty aptly named also Halloween. Probably kind of getting confusing at this point. Apparently this movie was supposed to be the proper sequel to the original Halloween, but it also be called Halloween is, well, rather confusing. Nonetheless, this movie starts in a prison, and it does some bizarre close-ups for whatever reason, as these two people, I guess they're like journalists, go to visit this doctor who was assigned to Michael Myers for several years, and Dr. Loomis is mentioned as they are asking about information. So they get told that Michael is getting transferred to another prison. So the guy, named Aaron, wants to investigate and goes up to Michael Myers and pulls out the iconic mask. So you can blame Aaron for the entire movie, as probably if he didn't pull out that mask, he would have probably never instigated Michael to start moving about. Nonetheless, maybe that's not the case, but I don't know. Anyway, we cut to Illinois as we continue to follow Aaron as he talks about how these things about they call these humans or monsters, and how a monster created another monster. That's pretty much essentially talking about the first movie. They move into this restricted area, which is owned by Jamie Lee Curtis's character, or as I called her in my notes, Grandma Jamie. So she plays the grandmother to this family, and gets talked to by these journalists about surviving the whole ordeal with Michael Myers, in which it cuts to this family, who we see are sort of main character Allison and her parents. So she wants to go out and date this guy. And it cuts to her talking to her one other friend and this other guy who likes to blow stuff up. His name is Dave. And they get a little fake jump scare in there somewhere. So Allison goes to the class and kisses her boyfriend, and they make plans essentially to go to this party. And one of his friends is sort of messing around with both of them. So meanwhile, the main character Allison sees her grandmother waiting outside for her, and decides to give her this money that she got from the two reporters. So we can see that Grandma Jamie Lee Curtis starts to practice some gunshots out in this little range that she somehow owns as well. And we get this recorder information from a voice that is, I believe it was from Dr. Loomis, talking about wanting to just end Michael for good. I don't know if that was him or not. Meanwhile, it cuts to her in the car as she sort of screams as she's just so done with it. From there, it cuts to Allison and her boyfriend and the family coming together and the grandma visits them, and she joins them, sort of being still in this sort of state. And as she makes her way outside, Allison makes sure that things are going okay. And the mother, in a rather just straightforward, kind of deadpan sort of way, explains that her entire growing up life was being taught to fight and shoot guns to prepare for a given situation, such as Michael Myers escaping. So, we cut to this car that stops with this older man with this random kid, and they see the bus that was transferring Michael crashed in the middle of the road, and some of the people sort of roaming around the streets. So the kid gets out with a gun, and then he starts moving towards one of the police, who sort of gets him to call the police from his car, and then move back to the bus and shoot some guy who I assume he was like a doctor or something, or some other guy. Nonetheless, the kid flees right back to the car, then is grabbed by Michael Myers and killed. So our first confirmed kill from Michael Myers is this kid. So we cut to this convenience store, and some people are just talking about stuff. And the sheriff arrived. Then we cut to the sheriff arriving on the scene of what just happened, and him talking to one of the other cops and trying to get some backup there. So Halloween, the actual day, rolls around, and Aaron and his partner, I don't remember her name at all, honestly, talk to this grave owner about Judith Myers, which I think is like Michael Myers' sister. Anyways, I think that was the one he killed in the original. Anyway, so the sheriff arrives at this hospital and talks about the timeline of how it had been 40 years of time gone by since the first movie and this one. I believe that timeline is actually bizarrely accurate. So that is crazy to me, to think that they actually gave us the official, like, gap of time. Nonetheless, Aaron is filling up on gas, and his partner, the lady, goes into the restroom, and Michael Myers arrives on the scene, gets into the restroom, and attacks her. Or just, start to mess with her at the very least. Meanwhile, Eric is seeing this dead body and then sees another one inside the store. Meanwhile, Michael Myers continues to mess with this woman, dropping teeth from his side to her side of the stall that she's hiding behind. And Eric comes in and tries to attack Michael to an utter failure. Then he is slammed around from side to side all around this restroom, up until the point he dies, and then she is then choked to death, and then he proceeds to go to the guy's car and grab his iconic mask. So Grandma Curtis, I actually like that name better than the actual name, whatever her name is in the movie, so sorry if I keep calling her that, but whatever, starts to hear the news, so she gets a little insight on what's happening. And she then uncovers a secret passage in her home. Again, I don't know how she's that rich, or how she can build something like that, but whatever. So, anyways, Ellison Ellison's mom, sorry, returns home, and meanwhile, uh, Grandma arrives at the house with a gun, saying, kind of testing her a little bit, and then tries to get the family to leave, but the mother kicks her out. So the sheriff arrives on the next scene of the attack that just happened, and the grandma also starts to make her way around that area. So kids are doing their little trick-or-treating, and Michael Myers moves about just right on the street, and no one seems to pay him any mind, at least at the moment. Two kids bump into him, and Michael Myers just sort of shuffles his way to this back of this random woman's house and kills her off screen. He grabs a weapon he is much more familiar with, the knife, or a knife. So he moves right back outside and moves to the house next door. So he works his way around to stab another victim. And thus it cuts to this dance party. And while that's going on, the main character, Allison, gets a call from her grandmother, but she's like, nah, I got nothing to do with that right now. And instead calls her friend, Vicky, who's watching over this kid. And she comes back inside to see her boyfriend kissing some other girl. So, in a rather bizarre scene, I want to call it, he takes her aside and then takes her phone like an asshole and drops it in food, and then it's like, hey, you want to go get that or whatever, and then, like, I don't know, it's just one of those weird moments where it's like, oh, it's just another character you want to die, you want to get killed. Anyways, so Grandma Curtis is riding around, and it cuts to Vicky and some other guy, her boyfriend, and they start making out, and then she hears a noise, and she wants him to look around. They both, or he sees the kid upstairs, and he claims to say that Michael is around and about, and Vicky proceeds to check around the room to say that there's nothing around. So the guy is looking around, and then he's like messing around with this motorcycle and ends up dropping it. In the meanwhile, Vicky opens the closet and then gets stabbed by Michael Myers, who was actually in there the whole time. So she's trying to flee as the kid actually legitimately flees from the scene. And the boyfriend goes in and grabs a much bigger knife, and then, but before he can really do anything, she is stabbed to death. We only see him really grab the bigger knife, and what his fate is killed off screen, unfortunately, once again. So the sheriff and the Grandma Curtis make their way over to the new scene. And the sheriff moves in while the grandma tells all the kids that are out and about to flee to their homes. The sheriff sees the dead body of Vicky and then ends up seeing Michael because of the grandma seeing him through the mirror, then shooting at the mirror, and then he's like, "Oh, you're here." So they both end up outside, and they rejoin up. And then afterwards, as Michael leaves the scene, the police arrive on the scene. And we see that the doc, the one that it was initially taking care of Michael, ends up seeing Grandma Curtis. Uh, Meanwhile, Ellison is walking with the guy from the classroom, the one that was like messing around with both of them from earlier, and then he's like trying to make his move on her now that she's by herself, but she wants nothing to do with him. Nonetheless, this doctor is like talking to the sheriff about like trying to understand the mind of Michael Myers and stuff like that. Uh, and they go to meet with the rest of the main family. Ellison again is with the other guy and still walking with him. But he gets stalled up when she leaves, and then he sees Michael Myers and then gets stabbed and killed. Ellison finally turns back and makes her way back there to see the dead body, and then sees Michael and starts to run and flee. So, meanwhile, the family is arguing over what they're trying to accomplish here, and the grandma, Curtis, sort of takes over the situation. And, we cut back to Ellison pretty briefly, but we cut right back to, the mother, or, grandma, unlocking the secret pass. I think it was the mother who unlocked the secret pass in their home. And then, Grandma Curtis preps them up, the family up for an attack of Michael Myers. Meanwhile, the sheriff, the doctor, and Ellison are driving, and they see Michael Myers just out and about, and the sheriff decides to just run him over. And he gets out ready to shoot, and the doc stops him. And the doc then proceeds to kill the sheriff, and then play it on the mask himself after hearing that Michael is dead. And he suddenly now understands what it's like to kill. Yeah, that part was definitely weird, and I've definitely heard other reviewers talk about this part kind of leading nowhere. And he sort of drops the mask in the back of the car, and we cut to these two cops who are just chilling in their car talking about food, and it goes on for a little bit. And then it cuts back to Ellison and the doctor in the police car. And she claims that Michael said something to her. But in the process of that all happening, Michael does his magic, no kidding, and appears in the back of the car and attacks the doc. So Ellison manages to escape as the cops see the cop car that has stopped, and they decide to check it out. So, Michael Myers smushes the doctor's head in. The two cops try to call out, and then they proceed to get to the front. Michael appears behind them, and then we instantly cut away as they are killed off screen. So we cut to Grandma Curtis turning off all the lights on the house, and then cutting to Ellison running through the woods. So then we cut to the father heading outside with a gun in hand and seeing the cop car stopped in front of their house. He tries to check in on them and sees the two dead bodies of the two cops. Michael proceeds to come up behind the dad and then choke him down to death. So the mother locks herself downstairs while Grandma Curtis stays up and then gets grabbed by Michael Myers pretty briefly before she grabs her gun and shoots behind her, breaking away the grip. So she turns on all the lights outside as Michael works his way inside. And Grandma Curtis at this point ends up in the basement with the mother and ends up shooting up at him. And she goes back up and starts to slowly but surely make her way around the house, securing room by room. She ends up. Sorry, we get a weird back cut to Allison running uh, through this sort of field, and then we get a weird close up, and then she screams for whatever reason. I assume she saw a dead body, but I don't know. Um, Anyways, it cuts back to the grandma Curtis looking around, seeing these mannequins that have been placed in her room. How they got there, I guess Michael made them appear somehow? I don't know. Anyways, he manages to attack her, and he tosses her outside to a drop. And then he hears Ellison arrive at home, and when he goes back to check on Grandma Curtis, she has suddenly vanished, a very Michael Myers trick, and now she's the one doing it. So the mother ushers Ellison down below, and Michael Myers makes his way downstairs, and tries to make his way down to where they are. So the mother grabs a gun and starts pointing it up, and starts to say like, "Oh, I can't do this. Oh, I can't do this." And then when Michael appears, she suddenly is like, "Gotcha," and then shoots him down, and then gets attacked from behind from Grandma Curtis, and they manage to all work together and then knock him down the stairs, and then Michael proceeds to stand up or sit up from a grounded stance and grab the mother as she's the last one up the stairs. They manage to kick him off with a little assist from Allison, and then Grandma Curtis heats up the lower room with these little torch things that she had set up, and the room ended up being an entire trap set up for Michael Myers. She throws a little flame down there, which the fires that are already down there catch, and the fire spread, and the rest of the fire spread out throughout the room, making the entire house catch fire. So the family, the Grandma Curtis, mother, and Ellison all escape. So Allison calls out to this car that arrives conveniently on the scene. So they are in the back seat while Allison holds on to a knife for dear life, and we cut back to the house fairly briefly to see that there is now no longer anyone down there as the house continues to burn down. And that was Halloween. This movie was good. It was very clearly trying to play homage, clearly trying to make several nods to previous movies. I think it is a bit weird that a lot of the deaths happen off screen when, they say that sometimes the scariest thing is things you don't see. But in this case, I don't know about that, because we know from Michael Myers' history and what we do see him do in the movies that he is very basic. He doesn't do anything, very extra, if you will. He keeps things very basic. He has the knife, he has the hammer, very basic tools at his disposal, and having these several cutaway deaths, I don't know, again, the ultimate, thing of, certain deaths happening off screen while some happen on screen. It's very weird. And I forgot there was some part of the movie where like Michael's is like walking through a house, and then there's like a baby, and then he sort of just ignores it. I forget where that happens in the movie, but it does. Just wanted to throw that in there, but nonetheless, there are definitely a few cuts in this movie where like there's like a really short scene of something happening could have probably been cut. I do think that happens a little bit later in the movie too, with like Allison running through the woods, screaming at nothing. Things like that. Could have been shortened down or like just streamlined altogether. And this movie definitely shifts focus in a weird way where it's like, okay, so now all of a sudden this doctor thinks like, oh, I've killed a person now. You suddenly feel like I can be like the next Michael Myers or whatever. It definitely feels like it kind of comes out of nowhere. Um, I think in a way it was a little bit set up, but I don't know if it was like set up well enough. Like it's so weird, and there's definitely a few other moments like that where like these other characters have like these little moments, and then they're sort of obviously set up for death. Or survival in some cases, like the kid that got watched over from Vicky, he ends up just like running away and then assumed to be alive. So yeah, I do think that there could have been some more streamlined events occurring in this movie to, just tighten it up in that regard. As far as the kills on screen versus the ones off screen, again, I don't fully understand why. Again, Michael is a very basic killer. I don't think, like, anything he's doing is extraordinary where, like, you see a corpse and you're, like, wondering, like, how the hell did that happen? And you never really understand why. I don't think that is ever the case. You're looking at that body and saying, yeah, she probably got stabbed to death. I don't think Michael Myers is going to really do it any other way. Again, very basic as to regards of how Michael ends up killing people or displaying their bodies afterwards by lighting them up, but with a little light inside their mouths. So, and the movie also sequel baits pretty hard. And, for all intents and purposes, I hope they get to do it, because, more stuff for them to do. So, as far as a score, I'm going to give this movie a 6 out of 10, or even a 5 out of 10. I do think that there are quite a bit that this movie could have definitely tightened up on. The characterization of Grandma Curtis here was definitely the strongest part of this movie. Though again, how she comes across all, like, having all that equipment is a little bit bizarre. It is never really explained anywhere in the movie, but putting that aside, I think she's a fantastic character, which is something extremely rare in a horror movie, quite frankly. So at least they got, they did stuff right in this movie. They definitely did stuff right, particularly pertaining to her. But again, I do think that them shifting so much focus around all these other little things definitely, like, particularly the one with the doctor. That one was definitely the biggest one where it was like, okay, you're doing what now? So yeah, definitely could have used some tightening up. But that is my review of Halloween 2018. And if you enjoyed this review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out that link in the description or head you over to my Patreon page. And any donations are greatly appreciated. And until next time, everyone, bye-bye.